I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who begs. But there I was, standing in Marcus Hale's office at midnight, mascara-stained and desperate, watching the city lights blur through floor-to-ceiling windows while my career, my entire life, hung by a thread. "Please don't fire me," I whispered, and I hated how small my voice sounded. He didn't move from his desk, didn't blink, just studied me with those storm-gray eyes that had seen me at my most vulnerable 3 weeks ago. When he finally spoke, his voice was dark velvet and absolute power. "Then marry me, Helena." The room tilted. This man, my boss, the most dangerous person I'd ever known, had just proposed. And the terrifying part? I was actually considering it. You will feel so many emotions in this mysterious love story I'm about to tell. Please support us by clicking subscribe to the channel. 3 weeks earlier, I was invisible. That's what good secretaries are supposed to be. Efficient ghosts who anticipate needs before they're spoken, who keep schedules running smoothly and secrets locked away. I'd perfected the art of disappearing into beige walls and polite smiles. Marcus Hale barely looked at me during those first 6 months of working for him. I was just Helena from HR, the girl who brought him coffee at 7:15 every morning, black with 1 sugar, and reminded him about meetings he never forgot anyway. The annual charity gala was supposed to be just another night of invisibility. I wore the same black dress I'd worn to every company event for 3 years. Simple, forgettable, appropriate. My job was to make sure Marcus's evening ran smoothly, to anticipate problems before they materialized, to be present but unseen. I was good at my job. Too good, maybe. Because I'd gotten so used to being invisible that I forgot sometimes people could still see me cry. The rooftop garden was supposed to be empty. I'd checked the schedule twice. But when the panic attack hit, when the hospital called about my mother's latest test results and the number they quoted made my vision swim, I couldn't hold it together anymore. I found the darkest corner, behind the potted palms and hanging lights, and let myself break. Just for a moment, just until I could rebuild the professional mask and go back inside. I didn't hear him approach. Marcus moved like smoke, silent and inevitable. When he spoke, his voice was closer than I expected. "What do you need? Not are you okay? Not what's wrong? What do you need?" Like he could fix anything with a signature, like problems were just puzzles waiting for the right solution. I should have lied. Should have apologized for the unprofessional display and retreated back to my role. Instead, I looked up at this man in his $3,000 suit. This man whose phone calls made executives sweat and whose business dealings were whispered about in boardrooms and back alleys. And I told him everything. My mother's Alzheimer's, the nursing home costs bleeding me dry, my father's debts that somehow became mine when he died. The second job I'd taken on weekends that still wasn't enough. The crushing weight of being 26 years old and so tired I sometimes forgot what hope felt like. He sat down beside me on the cold stone bench. Didn't touch me, didn't offer empty platitudes, just listened like my pain mattered, like I was a person instead of a function. When I finally stopped talking, he was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Let me help." I should have said no. Should have thanked him politely and maintained the professional boundary. But desperation makes you reckless. And I was drowning. So I nodded, and something in his expression shifted, softened. He kissed me under the string lights with the city humming below us, and it felt like falling and flying at the same time. Slow and deliberate, like he was claiming something precious. I forgot he was Marcus Hale, the architect, the man whose enemies disappeared and whose friends stayed loyal out of fear and respect in equal measure. I forgot that I was his secretary, that this was complicated and dangerous and completely impossible. In his penthouse, with Manhattan spread beneath us like conquered territory, I let myself be seen, completely. For one reckless night, I pretended I was someone who deserved to be wanted by a man like him. He touched me like I was made of light, whispered my name like it was a prayer. And for those hours, I forgot about debt and duty and the carefully constructed walls I'd built around my heart. Monday morning came the way Monday mornings always do, brutal and unforgiving. The moment I walked into the office, I felt it. The stares. The whispers that cut off when I passed. Sarah from accounting, who'd shared her lunch with me just last week, suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. David, Marcus's head of security, watched me differently now. Not with his usual professional distance, but with something harder. Calculating. They all knew. Somehow, impossibly, they all knew what had happened on that rooftop, in that penthouse. And in Marcus Hale's world, being known meant being dangerous. I tried to do my job. Brought him his coffee at 7:15 black with 1 sugar. But my hands shook when I set it on his desk. And he noticed. He notices everything. Helena. His voice made me freeze halfway to the door. Sir? Close the door. I did. The click echoed louder than it should have. He stood, moved around the desk with that predatory grace that made board members shift uncomfortably in their seats. But when he reached me, his touch was gentle, fingers under my chin, tilting my face up to meet those storm-gray eyes. People are talking, I managed. Let them, he said simply. Then, are you all right? The question broke something in me. Because no, I wasn't all right. I was terrified and confused and completely out of my depth. But before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression went cold in a way that made my stomach drop. You need to leave, he said. Now. What? Go home, Helena. Lock your doors. Don't talk to anyone. I'll send someone to watch your building. Marcus, you're scaring me. He pulled me close then, quick and fierce, his mouth against my hair. Good. You should be scared. I made a mistake bringing you into my world, and now someone's trying to use that against me, against us. He let me go, stepped back, all business again, but his eyes held something I'd never seen before. Fear. Marcus Hale, who faced down corporate raiders and organized crime with equal aplomb, was afraid for me. I left. Took the elevator down 43 floors with my heart hammering. Walked 3 blocks to the subway on autopilot. It wasn't until I was climbing the stairs to my 4th floor walk-up that I saw it. A small envelope taped to my door. Expensive cream paper that didn't belong in this neighborhood. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, 1 sentence in elegant script. Secrets don't stay buried, and neither do secretaries who know them. The morning after I found the note, I didn't sleep. Every sound became a threat. Footsteps in the hallway, the elevator's groan, the neighbor's door closing. I sat on my couch with all the lights on, clutching my phone, unable to decide who to call. At 6:30, my buzzer rang. My heart stopped. The voice through the intercom was professional. Miss Reeves, I have a delivery from Mr. Hale. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a dark suit holding a coffee cup. Behind him, a black Mercedes idled at the curb. The man had an earpiece and military posture. He looked up at the camera. Your coffee is getting cold. I opened the door. The cup was my exact order. Vanilla latte, extra shot, oat milk. How did Marcus know? Mr. Hale insists on driving you to work. I'm Chen, your security detail. I don't need. Until the threat is neutralized, you don't go anywhere alone. Think of me as a shadow. A shadow. I was becoming a shadow of myself. But I got in the car. The office was different. Marcus had moved me to a private floor with no windows and a guard outside. It felt like witness protection. By lunch, I couldn't take it anymore. I went up to his floor, pushed past his assistant's protests, and opened the conference room doors without knocking. The men around the table weren't wearing suits. They wore leather and scars and expressions that screamed danger. Marcus stood, dismissing them with a gesture. When we were alone, I exploded. Someone threatened me. You moved me to a cage. You know my coffee order. You won't tell me why. He moved toward me. I stepped back. He froze. You're afraid of me. I'm afraid of not knowing, I corrected, of losing control of my life. Until I know who sent that note, you stay close. It's not negotiable. You can't decide that. Yes, I can. Someone threatened you. In my world, threats are promises. The flashback hit then. My father's funeral, men in expensive suits paying respects, my mother's white face, her shaking hands signing something. Later, she'd told me about borrowed money, bad investments. For years, we'd run, changed apartments, screened calls, paid cash for everything. I'd built a normal life from that chaos. And now you think I'm bringing that back, Marcus said. His jaw tightened. You're not wrong. He showed me photographs, surveillance shots of me at the grocery store, my mother's nursing home, my coffee shop. Someone had been watching me for weeks. My legs went weak. Marcus caught me, guided me to sit. He knelt in front of me. Let me help. By putting me in a cage. By keeping you alive. I've made enemies building my empire. The fastest way to hurt me is to take something I care about. You barely know me. I know enough. I thought about the rooftop, his penthouse, the way he'd touched me like I was precious. One night shouldn't mean this much. What if I'm not strong enough for your world? Helena, you've been strong your whole life. That's the problem. You've been handling everything alone. Your mother's illness, your father's debts, building a career from nothing. You're the strongest person I know. And strong people think they don't need help. I can handle myself. I know. But you shouldn't have to. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A white lily emoji, followed by an address. My mother's nursing home. Marcus was already moving, barking orders. He pulled me toward the elevator. Chen, get the car. Rodriguez, team at Sunrise Gardens immediately. Marcus, my mother. We'll be fine. I promise. His phone buzzed. He went rigid. When he looked at me, I saw something new in his eyes. Fear. They know about your mother, he said quietly. And they just sent her a bouquet of white lilies. White lilies. Funeral flowers. The message was clear as broken glass. Stay quiet, or watch everyone you love disappear. Marcus moved my mother that night. Not asked. Moved. By the time we arrived at Sunrise Gardens, she was already being transferred to a private facility whose name he wouldn't tell me. Somewhere with guards who didn't smile and doors that locked from the outside. I watched them wheel her out, confused and calling my name, and something inside me shattered. She's safe, Marcus said, his hand on my shoulder. But safe felt like another word for trapped. And I was starting to understand that Marcus Hale's version of protection looked a lot like control. The new facility was beautiful. I'd give him that. More like a boutique hotel than a nursing home. My mother had a suite with a view of a garden I suspected was more secure than it looked. The staff was attentive, professional, too perfect. When I asked the head nurse about visiting hours, she smiled and said, "Whenever you'd like, Miss Reeves. Mr. Hale has made arrangements for unlimited access." Arrangements. Everything in Marcus's world came down to arrangements, money changing hands, power reshaping reality, problems disappearing with a phone call. I should have been grateful. Instead, I felt like I was disappearing too, becoming another thing he'd arranged. For 3 days, I barely saw him. Chen drove me to work, to the facility, back to my apartment that no longer felt like mine. Marcus sent texts, brief, professional updates about security protocols and threat assessments. Nothing personal. Nothing that acknowledged we'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. On the 4th night, he appeared at my door at 2 a.m. "Get dressed," he said. "There's something you need to see." I should have refused. Should have demanded answers first, boundaries, some semblance of control over my own life. But there was something in his expression, something raw and urgent, that made me grab my jacket without arguing. The drive took 40 minutes, Chen at the wheel while Marcus sat beside me in the back, silent and coiled tight as a spring. We crossed the bridge into Brooklyn, dove into neighborhoods that got progressively darker, more industrial. When we finally stopped, we were at the docks. The smell hit me first, salt and rust and something underneath that made my stomach turn. Fear has a smell. I was learning that. The warehouse was the kind of place people disappeared into. Marcus took my hand, the first time he'd touched me since that day in his conference room, and led me inside. His palm was warm, steady. Mine was ice. "I need you to understand something," he said quietly, "about the world you've stepped into, about what protection really means." The main floor was empty except for a circle of harsh light in the center. And in that light, 3 men on their knees. I recognized them immediately. The finance director, Stevens, who'd always been friendly, who'd complimented my work. The VP of operations, Martinez, who'd given me a Christmas bonus. And Sarah's husband, David, head of security, who I'd thought was watching me to keep me safe. Marcus's people stood behind them. Armed, silent, professionals. "These men," Marcus said, his voice empty of emotion, "have been selling information to the Volkov family. Your name, your mother's location, details of every meeting I've had for the past 6 months." The words didn't make sense at first. Stevens had been friendly. Martinez had been kind. David had been... "They used you to get to me," Marcus continued, turning to face me. "You were never the target, Helena. You were the bait. They've been watching you since the day you started working for me. That night on the rooftop. They made sure you'd be there. Made sure I'd find you. Everything that's happened, it was all orchestrated. The floor tilted. I grabbed Marcus's arm for balance, and he steadied me immediately, his other hand coming to my waist. Why? I managed. Money, he said simply. The Volkovs offered them each $2 million for information that could destroy me. And you, vulnerable, beautiful, exactly my type, you were the perfect weakness to cultivate. I looked at the three men. Stevens was crying. Martinez stared straight ahead, defiant. David met my eyes, and I saw no remorse there. Only calculation. He'd probably been the one to suggest I work late that night, to make sure I'd be on that rooftop when Marcus went up for air. What are you going to do to them? My voice sounded distant. Not quite my own. That depends, Marcus said. On what you want me to do. The question landed like a physical blow. He was giving me a choice, or the illusion of one. I looked around the warehouse, at the men with guns, at the three kneeling figures, at Marcus's face in the harsh light. This was his world, a place where betrayal had consequences, where protection meant violence, where power was the only language anyone spoke. I don't want anyone to die, I whispered. Then they won't, Marcus said immediately. He pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke in Russian, fast, clipped, authoritative. When he hung up, he addressed the three men. You have 12 hours to leave the country. If you're still in the United States by sunrise, my offer of mercy expires. If you ever contact Helena Reeves, her mother, or anyone in her life again, there won't be a second warning. His people cut their bonds. The three men scrambled to their feet, stumbling toward the exit. David paused at the door, looked back at me. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, he said. He's not your savior. He's a monster wearing an expensive suit. Get out, Marcus said quietly. And David ran. When we were alone as we could be with a dozen armed guards pretending not to listen, Marcus turned to me. His hands came up to frame my face, and I realized I was shaking. This is what being protected by me looks like, he said. Intelligence. Strategy. Controlled force. I could have killed them. Part of me wanted to, but you asked me not to, so I didn't. You gave them 12 hours? I gave them their lives. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, wiping away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. In my world, Helena, that's mercy. The ride back was silent. I couldn't process what I'd seen, what it meant. Marcus Hale had just demonstrated extraordinary power and extraordinary restraint because I'd asked him to. He'd reshaped reality around my moral boundaries, and somehow that felt more dangerous than violence would have. At my building, he walked me to my door. Chen waited in the car, giving us privacy that felt staged, like everything else. I need time, I said. To think, to understand what this all means. Take all the time you need, Marcus replied. But Helena, you're still in danger. The Volkovs won't stop because 3 of their informants fled. If anything, this makes you more valuable to them. You're the weakness they cultivated, the crack in my armor. So what do I do? His expression was unreadable in the hallway's dim light. Stay close to me. Let me keep you safe. And try to remember that I'm not the villain in your story, even when it feels like I am. He left before I could respond. I went inside, locked the door, and stood in my dark apartment trying to reconcile the man who'd listened to my problems on a rooftop with the man who'd just casually threatened to kill 3 people for betraying him. My phone buzzed. I jumped. Unknown number. Not again. But this time, it wasn't a threat. It was a photograph. Me and Marcus, leaving the warehouse together. And a caption in that same elegant script. She's seen too much. End it. Or we will. V. The photograph lived on my phone for 2 days before I showed it to Marcus. 2 days of wondering if walking away would keep me safer, or if I was already too deep to surface. On the 3rd morning, Marcus appeared at my door before dawn. When I opened it, he looked tired. The careful mask had slipped enough that I could see the man underneath. We need to talk about rules, he said, walking inside. You bought my building, I said flatly. My landlord told me yesterday. I bought your safety. There's a difference. He turned to face me. You're right that I've been controlling everything. So let's establish ground rules. Mine, yours, ours. He moved to my kitchen, started making coffee like he'd done it before. Rule 1, he said. You don't leave my sight without telling me. Not for control, for protection. The Volkovs are still watching. That photograph proves you're vulnerable either way. I couldn't argue. The image was burned into my memory. Rule 2. You trust me. Even when you don't understand. I know I've given you reasons not to. But everything I've done has been to keep you alive. Sometimes I can't explain the why until after. And Rule 3. He crossed to me in 3 strides. You stop pretending you don't matter. To me. To this situation, you've spent your life making yourself small. The dutiful daughter, the efficient secretary. But you're not invisible anymore, Helena. You haven't been since that rooftop, and I need you to stop acting like you're dispensable. The words cracked something open in my chest. He was right. I'd perfected the art of being needed without being noticed. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn. With me. I have a rule too, I said, voice steadier than expected. You stop treating me like something fragile. I'm not glass. I survived my father's debts and my mother's illness and years of barely holding it together. Stop making decisions for me and start making them with me. He looked at me for a long moment. Then something shifted. Respect. Maybe. Deal. We shook hands like business partners. But when he should have let go, he didn't. His thumb brushed my knuckles. I know exactly what you are, Helena. That's why I'm terrified. Of what? Of failing you. I couldn't protect my sister. She died because I was too young, too weak to see the danger. I swore I'd never let that happen again, that I'd build enough power that no one I cared about would ever be vulnerable. How old were you? 19. She was 16. My father's enemies took her. By the time we paid the ransom, it was too late. His hand tightened. I was supposed to watch her that night. I had a meeting I thought was more important. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? Marcus, I'm not your sister. I'm not a child. I'm a grown woman who's been taking care of herself for a long time. You can't save me from every threat. At some point, you have to trust that I'm strong enough to stand beside you instead of behind you. I'm working on it. The coffee maker beeped. We sat on my couch as the city woke up, and for the first time, I felt like we were on the same side. Tell me about the photograph, he said. I showed him. His expression darkened. V for Volkov, Dmitri's signature. He's making this personal. Why? Because 10 years ago, his brother tried to kill me, and I killed him first. Marcus set down his cup. Self-defense. But Dmitri doesn't care. He's spent a decade looking for leverage, and now he's found it. Me. You. The woman I can't seem to stay away from, no matter how dangerous it gets. The way he said it made my breath catch. So what do we do? He made a call, spoke in rapid Russian. When he hung up, he pulled up files on his phone. Your father didn't borrow from the Volkovs for gambling. He borrowed to pay off a debt to my father's organization. The money Dmitri claims you owe? It's already been paid. They're using fabricated documents. The room spun. You knew. When you hired me, you knew who I was. I knew your father's name was on a list of people who'd worked for my father. But I didn't know about you specifically until after your background check. And by then, his voice softened. It was already too late. Too late for what? To protect myself from caring about you. His phone buzzed. Every muscle went rigid. Dmitri just filed a civil suit claiming you owe $2 million. He's demanding payment in 30 days, or seizure of assets, including your mother's facility and this building. The lawsuit arrived at 7 in the morning, bound in leather like something precious instead of a weapon. $2 million, 30 days, my mother's facility, the building that housed 17 families who had nothing to do with this war. This is leverage, Marcus said. Dmitri wants me to react. To make a mistake. What kind of mistake? The violent kind. If I go after him directly, I prove I'm exactly what he's been telling authorities, a criminal hiding behind legitimate business. So we do nothing. We fight smart. But there's something else here you need to understand. He handed me a page. An affidavit claiming my father had been a courier for the Volkovs, that he'd skimmed money, that I owed the balance. Is it true? Some of it, your father worked as a courier. But not for the Volkovs, for my family. And he didn't skim money. He was set up. The flashback hit me like a car crash. I was 17, hiding in my closet with hands pressed over my ears. But I could still hear the heavy footsteps, my father's panic, my mother's muffled crying. Just give me more time, my father begged. I'll get your money. Something heavy hit something soft. My mother screamed. You have 1 week, a cold voice said, accented. Or we take payment another way. You have a daughter, don't you? Pretty girl. She'd fetch a nice price overseas. I'd stopped breathing, pressed deeper into winter coats, prayed they wouldn't come upstairs. 3 days later, we were moving. New city, new names. We're starting over, my father said with hollow eyes. Everything's going to be fine. 6 months later, he was dead. Heart attack. 43 years old. Helena. Marcus's voice pulled me back. I was crying. He handed me tissues. Tell me. I told him about that night. The threat. How my father had looked at me like he was memorizing my face. About my mother's decline. The years of looking over our shoulders. The man who threatened you was Viktor Kuznetsov, Dmitri's enforcer. And the debt was fabricated. My father discovered it, made Viktor disappear, forgave the debts. Your father got a payout to relocate. It should have ended. But Viktor resurfaced under Dmitri's protection, building false cases against everyone my father helped. I left the door open, I said suddenly, the night they came. I'd gone out with friends, came home after curfew. I was supposed to use the side entrance, but I left the front door unlocked. That's how they got in. That's why... Stop. Marcus caught my hands. You were a child. None of this is your fault. Viktor and Dmitri are responsible. You were just trying to live your life. But if I hadn't, they would have kicked it down. Evil doesn't need an invitation, Helena. It takes what it wants and blames the victims for not being stronger. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered before Marcus could stop me. Miss Reeves, I'm Dmitri Volkov. I think it's time we met. Marcus's face went stone cold. I held up a hand. Why would I meet with you? Because you're smart. Because there are things about Marcus you don't know. Things about your father's death he's keeping from you. Dmitri's voice was almost kind. Your father didn't die of a heart attack. He was murdered. And the man who gave the order is sitting beside you. The world tilted. That's not true. Meet me. Tomorrow, noon. Gramercy Park Hotel. Public place. Let me show you the evidence. The line went dead. I stared at Marcus. Tell me he's lying. I didn't give any orders regarding your father. But my father's organization had many moving parts. Decisions I only learned about after. If someone in my employ harmed your father, I'll find out who. But I swear, I never authorized anything against him. It was the truth, but a truth with gaps. I need to meet with him. I need to hear what he has to say. Absolutely not. He'll what? Kill me in a public hotel? I stood, pacing. I've spent 8 years wondering what happened. If there's a chance he has answers, he has lies designed to turn you against me, then let him try. I'm tired of being protected from the truth. You want me to trust you? Then trust me to hear him out and decide for myself. Marcus made a call in Russian. When he hung up, he looked at me with something raw. We go together, and whatever Dmitri shows you, remember I'm right here. Not hiding, not running. Here, with you, ready to face whatever comes next. My phone buzzed. A video file. I opened it. Security footage, 8 years old. My father meeting a man in a suit, shaking hands, counting cash. Then a second man appeared. Put something in my father's coffee while he wasn't looking. Cut to my father stumbling, clutching his chest, collapsing in a parking lot. The caption, the man who poisoned your father's coffee worked for Marcus Hale. Meet me tomorrow, and I'll give you his name. I didn't sleep. The video played on loop in my mind. My father counting cash, the casual approach of the second man, the poison slipped into coffee, the collapse, murdered, and the man responsible might work for Marcus. At 5 a.m., I found Marcus awake. Laptop open, screens full of documents. I've been going through employment records from 8 years ago, he said. Every person who worked for my father, cross-referenced with your father's death. 43 people who could have been there. He showed me photographs. Dead eyes, hard expressions. When I inherited my father's business, I inherited his sins. I've spent 10 years legitimizing everything, but there are ghosts I can't exorcise. If one of them killed your father, his jaw tightened. That blood is on my hands whether I gave the order or not. Why would they do it? Your father's last assignment was delivering documents to a judge, legitimate business, but the judge was later investigated for taking Volkov bribes. If someone was working both sides, they might have killed your father to keep him quiet. Or to frame your family, I said. Destroy your legitimacy. You're thinking like a strategist now. I'm thinking like someone tired of being a pawn. The Gramercy at noon was public, elegant. Marcus's team positioned throughout. Dimitri sat alone, silver-haired and handsome in the dangerous way. Miss Reeves, thank you for coming. He stood, offered his hand. And Marcus. How long? 3 years? Since you tried to have me killed at the Met Gala. 4 years? 2 months. Unfortunate misunderstanding. Sit. You sent me a video, I said. Claimed the man who poisoned my father works for Marcus. Viktor Kuznetsov. Currently your director of asset management. Dimitri slid a tablet across. He approached your father 8 years ago. Your father refused protection money, so Viktor poisoned him. I studied the documents, medical reports, toxicology, witness statements. Why wait 8 years? Marcus asked. Because 8 years ago, you were nobody. Now you're the architect. Taking you down matters. Viktor is my way in. Marcus called Viktor. Put it on speaker. Where are you? Office? Boss? Why? Come to the Gramercy. Dimitri has claims about your employment history. Silence. Too long. I can explain. Then come explain. 20 minutes. Marcus hung up, looked at Dimitri. If you're lying, I will destroy you. And if I'm telling the truth? If Viktor confirms he killed Helena's father? Then I keep my promise. I hand him to the authorities. You'd burn your own director to satisfy her need for closure. Not sentimental. Strategic. 18 minutes later, Viktor walked in. Early 40s, forgettable face. You must be Helena Reeves. Do you remember my father? Thomas Reeves, died 8 years ago. Good man. His death was unfortunate. Was it poison? Did you watch him die? Viktor looked at each of us, decided. Yes. Ricin. Slow acting. Painless, relatively speaking. The confession hung in elegant air. Why? He'd seen something. A meeting between Dimitri and Marcus's father, negotiating territory. Your father realized the whole turf war was theater. We were all working together. My mind reeled. Working together. Was a performance. Dimitri finished. Brilliant, really. We ran the city for 15 years that way, until Marcus decided to go legitimate. I looked at Marcus. Found grim confirmation. You knew. I found out after my father died. Yes, they were partners. When I started actually fighting the Volkovs, I broke a 15-year truce. That's why Dimitri wants revenge. My father had been killed because he'd seen behind the curtain. And you've been playing both sides? I asked Viktor. Until recently. But then you came along. Marcus Hale falls for the daughter of a man murdered by his organization. The irony was perfect. Marcus stood, phone out. Chen, Rodriguez, take Viktor into custody. Contact the FBI. Full cooperation. You're arresting me? You admitted to murder, in front of witnesses. Helena wanted justice. This is what that looks like. Dimitri smiled. Congratulations. You've just handed the FBI confirmation that your organization employed a murderer for 8 years. Even if Viktor flips it, you're still complicit. Maybe. But Helena gets her justice. And that's worth more than my reputation. He held out his hand. I stared at it. This man who'd just sacrificed everything for a promise. I took his hand and stood. Whatever game you're playing, Dimitri, I won't be your weapon. I don't need you to be. Dimitri's smile was pitying. The FBI already has enough to arrest Marcus. By tonight, he'll be in federal custody. And you'll be the state's key witness. You're the only one who can testify to how much Marcus really knew about Viktor's crimes. He walked away. Marcus's phone rang. His expression went blank. It's the FBI. They're here. In the lobby. The FBI agents were professional, almost apologetic. Special Agent Morrison, mid-40s, tired eyes. The kind of cop who'd seen enough to know that good and evil rarely came in pure forms, read Marcus his rights in the Gramercy lobby while hotel guests pretended not to stare. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Marcus stood perfectly still, hands already positioned for the cuffs, and I realized he'd been expecting this. Maybe not today, maybe not like this, but somewhere in the back of his mind, he'd always known his past would catch up to him. Miss Reeves, Agent Morrison turned to me. We'll need you to come to the field office. Just to answer some questions about your relationship with Mr. Hale and what you know about his business operations. Am I under arrest? Not at this time, but your cooperation would be appreciated. The words were careful, diplomatic, but I heard what he wasn't saying. Cooperate, or become a suspect yourself. Chen appeared at my elbow, his presence grounding. Marcus caught my eye as they led him toward the exit. And in that brief glance, I saw something that made my chest tighten. Not fear for himself, but fear for me. Fear of what they'd ask me to do. Fear that I'd finally see him clearly and walk away. The federal building in Lower Manhattan was exactly what I expected. Gray, bureaucratic, designed to make you feel small and powerless. They put me in an interview room that smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee, left me alone for 20 minutes that felt like hours. Classic intimidation tactic. I'd watched enough crime shows to recognize it. When Agent Morrison finally entered, he brought a woman with him. Agent Park, younger, sharper, the kind of ambitious prosecutor who built careers on high-profile cases. Thank you for your cooperation, Miss Reeves, Morrison began, settling into the chair across from me. I know this must be difficult. You've only worked for Mr. Hale for 7 months, is that correct? Yes. And your relationship with him, when did that become romantic? I thought about the rooftop, the way Marcus had sat beside me like my pain mattered. About his penthouse, the city lights, the feeling of being seen for the first time in my life. 3 weeks ago. So relatively recent. Agent Park leaned forward, which means you might not know the full extent of his criminal activities. We're offering you immunity, Miss Reeves. Full protection. Witness relocation, if necessary. All you have to do is tell us what you know about Marcus Hale's business dealings. They slid a document across the table. My immunity agreement, already drafted, just waiting for my signature. We know he's been running money through shell corporations, Morrison continued. We know about the offshore accounts, the real estate purchased under false names. What we need is someone on the inside who can testify to his day-to-day operations. Someone who scheduled his meetings, processed his transactions, saw who came and went from his office. Someone like me. The invisible secretary who'd been present for everything but noticed by no one. Until I'd been noticed. Until I'd become something more than a function. Viktor Kuznetsov has already agreed to testify, Park added. He's giving us everything. Names, dates, locations. But his credibility is compromised because he's admitted to murder. You, on the other hand, you're the innocent party here. The victim's daughter who unknowingly worked for the organization responsible for her father's death. Your testimony would be devastating to Hale's defense. I stared at the immunity agreement, one signature, and I'd walk away from all of this. No charges, no consequences. Just a new life somewhere far from Marcus Hale and his dangerous world. I could visit my mother without armed guards. Sleep without checking locks 3 times. Stop looking over my shoulder for threats that might never materialize. All I had to do was betray the man who'd given me a choice when everyone else had tried to take them away. Miss Reeves, Morrison's voice gentled. I understand you have feelings for him, but you need to understand what Marcus Hale really is. We've been building a case against him for 3 years. The legitimate businesses, their fronts, the charitable donations, money laundering. Every good thing he's done publicly is designed to hide what he does in private. And what does he do in private? I asked, keeping my voice level. He's a criminal, Park said flatly. He inherited a criminal empire, and instead of dismantling it, he made it more efficient, more invisible. The fact that no one's been able to prove it until now just shows how good he is at hiding the truth. But that wasn't what I'd asked. I'd asked what he did, specifically, and their vague accusations suddenly sounded hollow. The kind of thing prosecutors said when they had smoke but no fire, suspicions but no proof. Did Marcus order my father's death? I asked directly. Morrison and Park exchanged a glance. We don't have evidence of that specific order, Morrison admitted. But he employed the man who did it. He created the environment where that murder was possible. And he's been paying Viktor Kuznetsov for 8 years, which makes him an accessory after the fact, even if he didn't know Viktor had killed anyone. Willful ignorance isn't a defense, Park said. He should have known. He should have vetted his employees better. His negligence makes him culpable. I thought about Marcus going through employment records at 5 in the morning, searching for my father's killer. About the way he'd looked when Viktor confessed, not surprised, but devastated, like he'd failed at something fundamental. What if I don't sign? I asked. Then you become a person of interest in our ongoing investigation, Park said. We'd have to question whether you've been complicit in Hale's operations, whether you've been helping him hide evidence or funnel money. Your position as his secretary gives you access to everything, Miss Reeves. If you're not helping us, the implication is that you're helping him. There it was. The threat underneath the offer. Cooperate, or become collateral damage. I picked up the pen, watched Morrison's expression shift to satisfaction, saw Park pull out her laptop, ready to take my statement. They thought they had me. Thought I was just another scared girl who'd choose safety over loyalty. They were wrong. I need my lawyer, I said, setting the pen down unsigned. And I'm not answering any more questions without legal representation, Miss Reeves. You said I'm not under arrest, which means I'm free to go. I stood, my legs steadier than they had any right to be. If you want to charge me with something, do it. Otherwise, I'm leaving. Morrison stood too, blocking my path to the door. You're making a mistake. Once we arrest him, and we will arrest him, anyone associated with Marcus Hale becomes tainted. Your mother's care facility? Paid for with potentially illegal funds. This building you live in? Same thing. Your entire life for the past 7 months has been funded by criminal enterprise. If you don't cooperate now, we'll freeze all of it. Your mother will be moved to state care. You'll lose your apartment. Everything Hale gave you will disappear, and you'll be left with nothing but a target on your back from his enemies who think you betrayed him. The threat was designed to break me, to make me see the impossible position I was in. Damned if I cooperated, destroyed if I didn't. Instead, it clarified everything. I'd spent my entire life being afraid of my father's debts catching up to us, afraid of my mother's illness bankrupting us, afraid of being too visible, too noticed, too much. I'd made myself small and invisible because that felt safer than standing in the light and risking everything. But Marcus had seen me anyway, had sat beside me when I was breaking and asked what I needed, not what I could give him, had protected me even when it meant exposing his own vulnerabilities, had arrested his own director and called the FBI himself because I'd asked for justice, even though he knew it would lead to this exact moment. He'd given me a choice. Over and over again, even when controlling me would have been easier, he'd given me a choice. Now it was time to choose. Move, I said quietly to Morrison, or I'll call my lawyer and file a harassment complaint before I walk out that door. He stepped aside. Smart man. In the hallway, Chen was waiting. His expression didn't change when he saw me, but I caught the slight nod. Approval, maybe harsh or just acknowledgement that I'd survived. Where's Marcus? I asked. Processing. Chen fell into step beside me. They're holding him overnight. Arraignment in the morning. His lawyers are already working on bail. I need to see him. That's not possible tonight. But Miss Reeves, Chen's voice lowered, what you just did in there, refusing to sign. That buys us time. If they had your testimony, they could move forward immediately. Without it, they have to rely on Viktor, and his credibility is compromised. I didn't do it for tactical reasons, I said. I did it because they wanted me to betray someone who's never betrayed me. And I'm tired of being the person who runs when things get hard. We stepped outside into the autumn evening. The city was doing its thing. Taxis honking, people rushing toward trains, the world continuing like federal arrests and immunity deals and impossible choices happened every day. Maybe they did. Maybe I'd just been too invisible to notice before. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. My stomach clenched. But I answered anyway. Helena. The voice was smooth, accented, familiar. Dmitry Volkov. I'm impressed. I thought for certain you'd take the FBI's offer. Most people choose safety over loyalty. What do you want? To talk, really talk, without Marcus hovering and without federal agents recording every word? There are things you deserve to know about your father, about the night he died, things that Marcus doesn't know because I've kept them to myself for 8 years. Why would you tell me now? Because you're interesting, Helena. Because you're standing at a crossroads. The woman who could destroy Marcus Hale with a single statement, but who chose not to. I want to understand why. And I think you want to understand what really happened the night your father died. Not the version Marcus has constructed. Not the version Victor confessed to. But the truth. The truth, I repeated. From you. The man who's been orchestrating this entire situation to destroy Marcus. Yes, from me. Because unlike everyone else in this sordid tale, I have nothing left to lose and therefore no reason to lie. Dimitri's voice held something almost like respect. Meet me. Tomorrow morning, before Marcus's arraignment, I'll give you everything. The full story of your father's last day, the real reason he was killed, and the name of the person who gave the actual order. Not Victor, not Marcus, not me. The fourth player you don't even know exists yet. And what do you want in return? Nothing. Consider it a gift. From one person caught in Marcus Hale's orbit to another. He paused. Or don't come. Stay loyal to a man you barely know, to an organization that killed your father, to a future that will always be defined by looking over your shoulder. The choice, as always, is yours. The line went dead. Chen was watching me carefully. Dimitri? He asked. I nodded, staring at my phone. At the encrypted number that had just offered me the one thing I'd wanted since I was 17 years old, the complete truth about my father's death. All I had to do was meet with Marcus's enemy. Alone. Without telling anyone. The smart choice was obvious. Tell Chen, tell Marcus's lawyers, stay far away from Dmitry Volkov and his convenient offers of truth. The safe choice was clear. But I'd stopped choosing safe the moment I'd refused to sign that immunity agreement. I need you to do something for me, I said to Chen, and you're not going to like it. The address Dmitry sent was a coffee shop in Brooklyn, small, family-owned, the kind of place that smelled like cinnamon and had mismatched chairs. Nothing like the Gramercy's calculated elegance. This felt deliberate. A message. I'm not trying to intimidate you. I'm trying to talk. Chen had argued for 20 minutes before finally agreeing to let me go alone. But he'd wired me, put a tracking device in my phone, and positioned his team at every exit. I wasn't as alone as it appeared. The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it reminded me that even my rebellion was being managed, orchestrated, controlled by men who thought they knew better. Dmitry sat at a corner table with 2 coffees already ordered. He stood when I entered, pulled out my chair like we were on a date instead of engaged in whatever dangerous game this was. You came, he said. I wasn't certain you would. You offered me the truth about my father. I sat, didn't touch the coffee. What daughter could resist that? A smart one who values her safety over closure. He smiled. But you're not that daughter, are you? You're the one who refused FBI immunity, who stayed loyal to a man currently in federal custody, who walked into a room alone with her lover's enemy. You're either remarkably brave or dangerously naive. Maybe I'm just tired of men making decisions about my life without asking me first. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps? Or recognition of a kindred spirit trapped in circumstances beyond their control. Your father, Dmitry began, pulling out a leather folder, was not killed because he saw a meeting between my organization and the Hales. That was Victor's convenient lie, one I've allowed to stand because it served my purposes. The truth is more complicated and far more tragic. He slid photographs across the table. My father, younger than I remembered, standing with a woman I didn't recognize. They were laughing, his arm around her shoulders, both of them looking at something off camera. Your father was having an affair, Dmitry said quietly. With my wife. The words didn't compute at first. My father, who'd loved my mother desperately, who'd worked himself to death trying to protect us, having an affair. I don't believe you. I didn't want to either. Dmitry's voice held old pain. Anya was everything to me. Beautiful, intelligent, the only person who saw past the violence and fear to the man underneath. When I discovered the affair, his jaw tightened. I was destroyed. Not angry, destroyed. He showed me more photographs. My father and Anya at a restaurant, walking through Central Park, standing too close, looking at each other the way people do when they're falling. I hired Victor to follow them, to gather evidence for the divorce I was planning. But Victor saw an opportunity. He went to your father, told him he could make the affair disappear, erase the photos, destroy the evidence, if your father would do one last job, deliver documents to a judge, no questions asked. My stomach turned. I knew where this was going. The documents implicated me in crimes I hadn't committed. Victor was working with the FBI, building a false case. Your father was supposed to be the courier who'd testify he'd received the documents directly from me. But your father, Dimitri's voice softened, your father read them, realized what Victor was doing, and instead of delivering them, he destroyed them and went to my wife to confess everything. What did she say? That she loved him, that she was planning to leave me, that I deserved better than a wife who'd fallen for someone else. Dimitri stared at his untouched coffee. She was kind, even then. Apologetic. As if breaking my heart required an apology rather than just the honesty to admit we'd grown into different people. So Victor killed my father to keep him from exposing the FBI setup. Yes. And then he killed my wife to keep her from telling me the truth. Made it look like a murder-suicide, as if your father had killed her in a jealous rage before poisoning himself. Dimitri's hands clenched. I believed it for 8 years. Believed your father was a monster who'd destroyed my marriage and murdered the woman I loved. I've spent nearly a decade hating him, building a case against everyone connected to him, trying to find justice for Anya. Until 3 months ago, when I finally caught Victor working both sides. Got him drunk, got him talking, got him to confess. He pulled out his phone, played a recording. Victor's voice, slurred with alcohol, laughing about how he'd played everyone, the Hales, the Volkovs, the FBI, how he'd killed 2 people and pinned it on each other, how he'd gotten away with it because everyone believed the story that fit their assumptions. I listened to the recording, feeling sick. My father hadn't been perfect, but he'd been trying to do the right thing at the end, and he'd died for it. Why tell me this? I asked. Why not just let me believe Victor's version? Because you deserve the truth. All of it, not just the pieces that serve someone's agenda. Dimitri met my eyes. Your father made mistakes. So did my wife. So have I. In seeking revenge instead of understanding. But the real villain has always been Victor, the man who saw love and vulnerability and decided to weaponize it for his own gain. Marcus arrested him, turned him over to the FBI. I know. Dimitri smiled slightly, which means Marcus Hale is either genuinely in love with you or executing a brilliant tactical move to distance himself from his compromised employee. Either way, Victor will spend the rest of his life in prison, and justice, however delayed, will be served. And the FBI's case against Marcus will collapse without Victor's testimony holding up. The man just confessed to lying for 8 years, to manipulating evidence, to playing all sides. No prosecutor will touch him as a witness now. Dimitri leaned back. Marcus will walk. His reputation might be damaged, but he'll survive. He always does. I processed this. The intricate web of lies and counter-lies. Everyone manipulating everyone else while my father and Dimitri's wife paid the price for being human enough to fall in love at the wrong time. What do you want from me? There had to be an angle. Nothing. Dimitri stood, left cash on the table for the coffee neither of us had touched. I wanted you to know that your father's last act was one of integrity. He chose truth over safety, love over self-preservation. That's worth knowing, regardless of his other failures. And Helena, he paused at the door, tell Marcus Hale that we're even now. He didn't kill my brother. They killed each other in legitimate combat. And I didn't fabricate evidence against him. Victor did. We've both been puppets in a dead man's scheme. It's time to cut the strings. He left. Just walked out into the Brooklyn morning like he hadn't just rewritten my entire understanding of my father's death. Chen appeared at my table within seconds. Did you get all that? I asked. Every word. He sat in Dimitri's vacated chair. The FBI will want to hear this recording. It changes everything. Good. I stood, suddenly exhausted. Because I'm done being the victim in everyone else's story. It's time to write my own ending. Marcus's arraignment was at 10. I arrived early, dressed in the navy suit I'd worn to my first interview with his company. armor disguised as professionalism. His lawyers looked surprised to see me, then relieved. Clearly, they'd heard about the FBI's immunity offer and expected me to take it. Miss Reeves, the lead attorney, Catherine Chen, no relation to my bodyguard, approached carefully. We weren't sure you'd come. Where else would I be? Frankly, anywhere but here. You're not required to attend. In fact, most people in your position would be advised to maintain distance. I'm not most people. The hearing was brief, procedural. Marcus entered in a suit that somehow looked elegant despite a night in holding. His eyes found mine immediately, and I saw the question there. Why are you here? I mouthed back. Because I choose to be. The judge set bail at $5 million, high enough to make a point, low enough that Marcus's lawyers posted it immediately. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, shouting questions about criminal empires and murdered fathers and the secretary who stood by her boss through federal charges. Marcus ignored all of them, walked straight to me. You should have taken their deal, he said quietly. Probably. I held up my phone. But then I wouldn't have gotten this. I played Dimitri's recording. Watched Marcus's expression shift from confusion to understanding to something that looked like grief. When it ended, he was silent for a long moment. Your father was a good man who made human choices, he finally said, and Victor will pay for what he did to him. I'll make sure of that. You already have. I took his hand. The first time I'd initiated contact. The first time I'd chosen connection instead of waiting for him to choose me. The FBI's case just fell apart. Victor's confession to Dimitri undermines everything. You're going to be fine, Marcus. And you? His thumb traced circles on my palm. How are you going to be? Honestly, I don't know yet. I'm the daughter of a man who wasn't perfect but who tried to do the right thing at the end. I'm the woman who fell for a dangerous man and refused to betray him even when it would have been easier. I'm standing here in front of cameras and reporters and my entire life is going to be dissected on the internet. And somehow, I smiled. Somehow I think I'm going to be okay. He pulled me close, right there on the courthouse steps, and kissed me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Around us, camera flashes went off. Reporters shouted questions. His lawyers tried to intervene. But for that moment, none of it mattered. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Thank you, he whispered, for choosing me. For choosing us. I didn't choose us, I corrected gently. I chose myself. The woman who stands in the light instead of hiding in shadows. The woman who asks for the truth instead of accepting comfortable lies. You're just lucky that the version of myself I chose includes loving you. His laugh was soft, a little broken. I'll take it. 3 months later, the federal charges were officially dropped. Viktor Kuznetsov pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder and a dozen other charges in exchange for a life sentence instead of death row. The FBI investigation into Marcus's organization continued, but without Victor's testimony, the evidence was all circumstantial. Smoke without fire, just like I'd suspected. My mother was painting in her suite when I visited, watercolors of gardens she remembered from childhood. She looked up when I entered, and for a moment, just a brief, precious moment, recognition flickered in her eyes. Helena, she said. My beautiful daughter. When did you get so strong? I learned from you, Mom. I kissed her forehead. You survived Dad's mistakes and your own illness, and you never stopped fighting. You taught me that strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting up every time you do. Did I teach you that? She looked confused again. I can't remember. That's okay. I remember for both of us. In Marcus's office, my office now, since I'd been promoted to Chief Strategy Officer with the explicit mandate to clean house and rebuild the organization's reputation, I stood at those floor-to-ceiling windows and watched the city sprawl below. Behind me, Marcus was on a call with investors, his voice confident and controlled. We worked well together, I'd discovered, partners in the truest sense. That evening, he found me still at my desk, reviewing contracts. Come home, he said. It's late. Just finishing this acquisition proposal. Helena. He pulled the file from my hands gently. The proposal can wait. You can't save the entire company in a single night. No, but I can try. He smiled that rare, soft smile. The one that reminded me why I'd chosen this complicated, dangerous, beautiful life over the safe alternative. You know, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. I never actually heard your answer that night in your apartment, when I asked you to marry me. I turned in his arms, looked up at this man who'd terrified me and protected me, and ultimately given me the space to become who I was always meant to be. The answer is yes, I said. Not because I'm desperate to keep my job or afraid of losing your protection, but because I love you. Because we've built something real from all this chaos. Because you see me, truly see me. And that's rarer than safety or comfort or any of the things I used to think mattered. Even though my world is dangerous. Especially because your world is dangerous. It means the choice to love you actually means something. I smiled. Besides, I'm dangerous now too. Victor learned that the hard way. His laugh was full and genuine, the kind of sound that filled the office with light. We were married 6 months later. Small ceremony, just us and a handful of people we trusted. My mother was there, lucid enough to cry during the vows, beautiful in a dress Marcus had commissioned specifically for her. Chen gave me away, which felt appropriate since he'd literally kept me alive through this entire ordeal. Standing there, promising forever to a man whose past was complicated and whose future was uncertain, I thought about the girl I'd been 8 months ago. The invisible secretary who'd been crying on a rooftop, drowning in her father's debts and her mother's illness and the crushing weight of just surviving. That girl would have taken the FBI's immunity deal, would have chosen safety over loyalty, comfort over love, would have run from danger instead of standing her ground and demanding truth. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was Helena Hale, the woman who'd stared down the FBI and a mafia boss and her own traumatic past. The woman who'd chosen to stand in the light even when shadows felt safer. The woman who'd discovered that strength wasn't about never being afraid. It was about being afraid and choosing courage anyway. Marcus kissed me like he'd kissed me on the courthouse steps, desperately, tenderly, completely, and I kissed him back, choosing him the way he'd chosen me, with full knowledge of the danger and the beauty of loving someone who'd seen your worst and called it worthy. Later, at the reception, Dmitri appeared, unexpected but not unwelcome. He approached carefully, aware that half the security team had their hands near weapons. "Congratulations," he said, and it sounded genuine. "Your father would be proud of the woman you've become." "Thank you, I meant it. And Dmitri, I'm sorry about your wife. She deserved better than what Victor did to her. We all deserved better." He smiled sadly. "But perhaps this is our second chance. To build something honest from the ashes of all these lies." He left after that, disappearing into the crowd. I watched him go. This man who'd been my enemy and my father's rival, and ultimately the person who'd given me the truth I needed to move forward. "Are you happy?" Marcus asked, pulling me close as the band started playing. I looked around at the small gathering, my mother laughing with Catherine Chen himself actually smiling, Rodriguez telling embarrassing stories to Marcus's business partners. This strange, fierce family we'd built from the wreckage of violence and betrayal. "Yes," I said simply. "I'm exactly where I choose to be." And I was. Not trapped by my father's mistakes or my mother's illness, or Marcus's dangerous world. But here, present, alive, choosing joy and love and partnership every single day. Choosing myself, again and again, in ways big and small. The girl who'd begged not to be fired was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her worth, who demanded truth instead of pretty lies, who understood that the most dangerous thing you can do is let fear make your choices for you. I was Helena Hale, wife, strategist, survivor, fighter, the woman who'd chosen herself, and in doing so, had found everything she'd never known she needed. If you made it to the end of this story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. And click the yellow bell to subscribe to the channel and support us. Keep the adventure going by clicking on the suggested video on your screen.